In motorsports, the greatest of all time discussion can be a source of great debate. Fan bases tend to argue about the differences between people who raced in separate eras of the sport under vastly different conditions and styles of competition. Some competitors may have had storybook careers with a definitive ending that get to enjoy retirement and bask in the glory of their achievements. But it always seems that there is one person in every racing series that has a benchmark-setting career, but they never get the opportunity to leave the sport on their own terms, or even enjoy life outside of racing. Some of the best drivers that were taken before they really had a chance to show the racing world what they had left would give the world a much larger argument for why they are the greatest of all time, leaving their fans pondering what if for the rest of time while their legacy carries on through time. As if fate was playing a sick trick, leaving an icon story with an open ending with little to no way to fill it and a hole in the heart of an industry with no one to replace it. In this video, we're going to take a glance behind the visor of one of drag racing's all-time greatest racers and one of the pioneers of the pro stock motorcycle class. This is the story of Dave Schultz. Before we start the video, I want to give you a quick reminder that if you enjoyed the videos I make, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and share the video to help spread awareness of drag racing. I plan on making multiple videos this year as well as cover the 2023 NHRA season and beyond, so if you want to see more and keep up, then please subscribe and follow me on all my social media platforms linked below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. On May 15, 1948, Dave Schultz was born in the Appalachian Mountains in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Almost as soon as he was able to ride a bike, Ernie Schultz gave his brother a love for mechanics, which awoke a competitive spirit within Dave to find a way to make his bike go faster. Dave's mother didn't want his competitive hunger to turn to racing, but with the drag strip near his home, Dave could be found sitting on the porch listening to the sound of cars screaming on the strip, which would eventually cause his mother to cave in and take him to the strip so he could watch. Before starting his career on the drag strip, Dave began working a typical blue-collar job as an iron worker during the 1960s in Marco Island, Florida during the town's early development. It is around this time he would meet a lady by the name of Meredith, in a rather unique way, and they would end up getting married with Meredith by his side for his entire career.
Well, we met water skiing of all things, and he wanted to find somebody. I lived in Marco Island in Florida, and he was working down there. And he wanted to find somebody that had a boat that he could go water skiing behind, and I had a boat. So he had some friends that had them to introduce him to me, and that's how it started. So we actually met, and we did a lot of water skiing together and a lot of sports together.
By the 70s, Dave had already started racing cars, but in 1976 he would opt to switch from driving a car to riding his bike as he had already owned a repair shop in Fort Myers, Florida, and didn't want his hobby to be the same as his job.
He had the auto body shop. He was putting a lot of hours in. He had a competitive streak in him, and he had a Mustang that he competed with. And he quickly found out that being an auto mechanic and working on cars to race wasn't a real good outlet for him. So he did that for maybe a half a year, and then he switched over to motorcycles. And in the meantime, he also did motocross. He raced quite a few motocross races in our area, and he did quite well at that.
Dave would start his drag bike career riding a two-stroke Kawasaki 400 triple, riding around in the motorhome with an enclosed trailer he had made out of fiberglass.
Yeah, he took a trailer, actually was made by Mastercraft Boats, and it was a fiberglass open trailer. And he, because there's a lot of, we lived in Fort Myers, so there was a lot of marine fabrication and boat repairing around the area. So he got with some people, and they take some measurements, and they made an enclosed trailer out of fiberglass, and that was the first enclosed trailer. And then from then on, people got the idea that would be better than hauling the bikes to the races in vans and box trucks. So that's how that started.
In 1978, he called the Fast by Gas shop, where he would meet the legendary tuner and rider Paul Gass, looking to find the ways to make his bike go faster by any means, which would then start a relationship between the two.
Yeah, so Dave Schultz and I met in the late 70s, maybe 78. And he first called me up as a customer. I didn't even know who he was. And he had a 400cc 3-cylinder Kawasaki 2-stroke drag bike in moderate fashion. And he was having fun locally with it. And he said, "Can you make this thing run faster?" And I said, "I believe I can." So Fast by Gas did such. And then our relationship started to blossom right away. We hit it off good. We're both all about power. And Dave was a fanatic, but all he cared about was more power, more power. He said, "I'll worry about what I do with it. Just get me more power." And that was the ongoing thing that probably the 10 years that we dealt together on these engine projects and bike projects and such. But Dave and I then became very good friends, and we did some family things together and visits and things like such. And mostly started as a customer and became a friend very quickly. I had a high regard and respect for Dave Schultz.
Paul would end up convincing Dave to ride a Kawasaki H2 Triple Pro stock that gas built by using a puppet chassis and a Fast by Gas 2-stroke engine, even to the point where they would start using NASA engineers to build the body pieces as light as possible. That paid off early, as in 1982 he would claim a win on a hole shot at the IDBA Sunshine Nationals in Darlington, South Carolina, beating Mike Key in the finals while also establishing a new 8th mile world record at 126.41 miles an hour. At the following race, the Summer Nationals in Hartford, Connecticut, Schultz would establish a new record time with a 5.56, but would lose to Mike Key in the semifinals due to a worn-out clutch causing him to red light.
Well, in the beginning on this very first, the second bike we worked for him, which was the Blue H2, famous bike. And we built 2 or 3 of those over about a 3-year period with updates. He, wait. We've got to have the thing light. It's got to be really light. Said, okay. We'll try this and that. So I got a guy that worked at NASA that made the body pieces, and I actually have them here now that project's all long gone. I've got the original body parts hanging on the wall here. You don't weigh these things in pounds. You don't weigh them in ounces. These are grams. They were paper thin. The guy said he had to secure them down just to spray paint them because the spray paint would shoot them. They virtually had no weight, almost no weight at all. A cigarette would be about the same weight level that these things were. So his bike was light, especially for the day. So the lightweight was a instrumental thing for him going fast, and it was one of the things that we created here for him. And he was pretty fanatical about lightweight. Lighten this. It was unbelievable.
Well, the 2-strokes he enjoyed doing because it was people that were kind of leaving the 2-strokes behind, thinking that the 4-strokes were the way to go. And Dave thought, and he got with Paul, and they decided that they would make a pro stock 2-stroke motorcycle in the 4-stroke world. And they were very successful at it, and he liked doing it. And Paul was, I can't say enough about Paul's sponsorship. Once he said he would do something, he would do it. If we had a problem with a motor, we'd send it to him, and then 2 days later it would be back and fixed. So, and there was quite a bit of carnage with that. Well, they both had a really strong work ethic, and they just fed off of each other. And Paul wanted his business to do well. Dave wanted the 2-stroke to do well, and they just had a good marriage in that sponsorship. And then when the 4-strokes came, when it was inevitable that we needed to go to the 4-stroke, Paul, he kind of moved up with that eventually. But there was no finer sponsor than Paul Gass at the time.
In 1984, Schultz competed in 4 NHRA national events with the H2 Triple Pro Stock before switching over to the 4-cylinder full bodies Pro Stock bike using Mikuni carbs. Schultz later switched to Fast by Gas Electron carbs, where he would find much success, and Paul admitted that it was the instrumental part in the growth of his business.
Racers would say to me, "I want a package like in that blue bike, Dave's." And I said, "We can do it. It's unlikely you're going to have the exact same successes, because, you know, not everybody's Dave Schultz. Maybe you will, but we can get you really close. For a quick example, I'd give a motor to a fella. He went out and ran really well, but it didn't run as fast as Dave's did. Dave said, and I told this to Dave because we were pals and we shared a lot of things. And I says, just not sure how to treat this, because remember, this was early on. I wasn't in business probably 7 years at the time, 7 or 8 years. Anyways, he, well, get the motor and let's put it in my bike. I go, what do you mean? He says, let's put it in my bike. See how it runs. Put it in front of the world. Everybody was at the track, popped it in, ran the same as his. I was so proud of that. I couldn't stand it because I wasn't 100% sure, because every little detail that I could put in Dave's cylinders and his engine was in it. And this other fellow who wanted the same thing, we tried to give him the same thing, but I did not expect it to quite run the same in Dave's bike. It did, and we never had to do that again. Everybody just believed, and Dave was the one who made that happen.
While most people only knew the serious and determined demeanor Schultz had at the racetrack, Paul Gass revealed a story about the Schultz's great sense of humor.
Yeah, so Dave was very, very serious guy, but he also had pretty solid sense of humor too. Certainly when you got, and I'm going to give you a quick funny story. This guy was a little bit crazy, I thought. So we're driving down on Route 10, going from, I don't even know, Texas to Florida, across Route 10 down in the south, and we're leaving Gulfport or something like that. So we're driving down the interstate, and we all towing trailers and such, and I'm going along probably at, I don't know, 65, something like that, throughway speed. Next thing I know, I see a light over on my right side, and I'm in the right lane, and on my right side, Dave Schultz rig, probably with Meredith on board, I'm sure of it, went flying by me. I don't even know how fast, probably 90. It just zoomed by me and in the gravel on the right-hand side of the road, and just shocked no end. And there we see, of course, it was Dave just goofing off. So he had a bit of a different sense of humor, but he did. I used to love when he laughed, because he had a great laugh, and I would try to laugh here and again. Another thing about him too is we had this little thing going on that he would be out at 1 a.m. working, so was I, and so were others, but not so many others. And Dave said, and this was a thing I always liked and cherished for a little memory of him. He said he'd out the back of his trailer and look down to see if I was still out working. And then he said to me one time, he said, I saw you, and I would do the same thing, of course. And he said, I saw you were still at it about 2 a.m. one day. He says, I ain't quitting. So he went back in, did some more stuff. He was a workaholic on the drag bike stuff. And for sure, for the many years that I worked with him, and I know for sure after, I mean, how many years can you be champion without a dedication beyond? And yeah, he had a work ethic that was off the charts. Absolutely off the charts.
Another story goes that in the early years of their careers, Dave and his wife Meredith were the only people who would show up in a motorhome while everyone else usually roomed together in a hotel during race weekends. While Gass was trying to find common ground between Schultz and himself during this time, Paul told Dave he loved alligators. So one race weekend, Dave, being from Florida, hid a 12-inch alligator in his cooler. I'm
going to tell you. Okay, so Dave was from Fort Myers. Alligators everywhere, right? And I love alligators. I love all animals, but I like alligators and crocs a lot. And he knew it. Every time I see him, I was asking him alligator stories, because he lived right there where there was a lot of gators. And so one day we're at the race, again, probably Gulfport, Mississippi, or Gainesville, or one of these type things. And we're in, me and my race team, probably 3 or 4 of us were stacked up in a hotel. And I'm laying in the bed in my jockey shorts under the sheet, watching TV, just hanging out. Next thing I know, I feel something down on my legs. What the heck is that? And I lifted up the sheet. And here comes a damn alligator running up my body. And gets about 6 inches from my face, and opens his mouth and throws a big hiss at me. Well, he ended up on the ground, and I ended up climbing the register. I had no idea this was coming off. So, I mean, I was just shocked seeing this thing running up my body. And so now, anyways, after that, they put him in a cooler, my boys did, and they bring him back to Buffalo. And one of our, Glenn Pazian, one of our racing friends back in the time, put him in a aquarium, and then a bigger aquarium, and then bigger aquarium, 4 different levels. His name was Gilbert, and he lived on for many years. He's not around anymore. This is in the early 80s. So, I mean, I don't know how long anything lived. He did not live that long, but he probably was around 15 years, maybe 20 even. He got pretty sizable, and he was beautiful, and I got to see him once a year maybe, and that kind of thing. But Dave is the one who initiated this whole thing. He went up to the boys and said, "Hey, Paul likes alligators. How about you slip this in his bed?" They hand him this thing. I don't know how long it was, probably a foot or so. It was a youngster, and up from a baby. And they did. They got me good, about as good as you could be gotten. Then the gator came home and lived on, and he has Dave about it forever. I'm sure he was chuckling like crazy when these guys were telling the story. Or they juiced the story pretty good. But Gilbert, it was a good one. So another one, we went down to visit my family, and all our kids were youngsters. I'm going to guess 8, 9, 10 years old. They were young. And we're down there in the river where he's from, and he's got jet skis. And we're out on his dock, and kids wanted to jet ski. We're just at the age they could do this. And he said, "Well, they can go out and jet ski. It'd be great." And I said, well, what do you mean? I says, "What's that out there?" And there's a little island out there. And there's crocodiles or alligators all over the place. He says, "Oh, they won't bother you." I says, "Well, what if they fall?" He said, "Well, it's probably better if they don't fall." Jet skiing. And anyways, they went out and jet skied, and I thought I was going to lose one of the 3. Then Dave took us, like Marlon Perkins, took us in a little canoe with a little engine on the back, little tiny boat, down these little contributaries down off that main river where all the gators were. Now, this was the most alligators you've ever seen, ever. There were just hundreds, thousands of alligators everywhere. And here's Dave down this little tiny river, and the gators were they'd come off the bank and go right under our little boat. He didn't even blink. First, back when we got stuck on a log once, he jumped right out and figured out how to get out. Frankly, there was probably a dozen gators all around him when he was doing this. He must have known, or maybe he didn't. I don't know. But anyway, he made the effort to take one of the kids out for their own solo ride, and it was just a wonderful memory of Dave and family, just good family time, not at the race.
Did he ever talk about how he got that gator? Was that maybe from the river? Like, where did that even come from? How did he get it to the track?
But they weren't hard to get. I mean, there was, you could just reach water and grab gators, I'm sure. So down in these little tributary, there was so many of them. I didn't even understand how many. Could have been thousands right where we were. And I'm sure he just grabbed one. I don't think he went to no store and got it. I'm sure it was. I think I asked him back in the time, "Where'd you get that?" A crazy question. Just reach in the water and grabbed them.
He liked to unwind when he was away from the racetrack, but he also did a lot of research to try to make the sport. He loved pro stock motorcycles, and he loved to try to make the sport more appealing to sponsors and to make it as high, as high class as he could, to attract sponsors and to attract the TV media. So he was always thinking how he could do that. Not being an engine builder, it wasn't going to be that route. He knew it needed to be a different route. So that's why he had come up with like the full fairing motorcycle. He knew that the sponsors needed signage, and there was no signage to be had on a regular pro stock motorcycle at the time, except on the wheelie bars. Well, you don't see that very much. So, there was a lot of things that he liked to try to create to make the class innovative and interesting.
Dave Schultz went on to win the IDBA Pro Stock Championship in 1986 and 1987. Soon after, Schultz won the inaugural NHRA Pro Stock Bike World Championship, beating Terry Vance, and he backed that up by winning the 1988 World title while Terry announced his retirements. Following the 1989 IDBA World Finals that saw Dave win his fourth consecutive Pro Stock title, Dave was presented the Max Award, which is presented annually to the person judged by the IDBA as having brought the maximum to the sport of motorcycle drag racing. In a front-page article written by the IDBA Motorcycle Drag Racing newspaper, they wrote about his speech. Rather than talk about it, I feel it was best just to read it in its entirety. When IDBA's Tony Gallows and Tony Lee made it evident during the annual award ceremony following the '89 World Finals that they were about to present the Max, eyes in the audience began to flip from one rider to another, to a manufacturer, to a sponsor. But within moments, all eyes seemed to drift to stage right, where Dave and Meredith Schultz were halfway hiding behind a post. Those eyes indicated approval as Lee called Dave and Meredith to come forward. Then bodies followed eyes, and the assembled family motorcycle drag honored the couple with a standing ovation. After all, who among his fellow racers has not seen Dave and Meredith's determined dedication? Who else has earned 4 IDBA's Pro Stock Annual Championships in a row? Terry Vance had earned 3 IDBA Annual Pro Stock Championships, but Schultz broke that record with 4 in a row. How about his 2 NHRA Pro Stock Series Annual Championships? Who else has appeared in feature articles in so many motorsports magazines that even he has lost count? Who else has been able to sell his program to sponsors so successfully that it is profitable, even after the expenses of the most luxurious travel rig in all motorsports? There seemed to be no question in anyone's mind that Dave Schultz had upgraded the level of competition, brought more national recognition to the sport, and peaked a higher level of outside sponsor interest in world drag racing to an extent exceeded by no one else. Truly, Dave Schultz, assisted by his wife Meredith, had brought the maximum. To the crowd's speech, Dave took a few quiet moments to thank his sponsors, with a careful singling out of the Vance and Hines Racing affiliation. He pointed out that they build good engines, and said if it were not for the wholesome image and ink that Terry Vance had preceded him with, it would have been much harder for him to achieve the level outside of family recognition he enjoys. Dave freely admits that Vance is his favorite pro stock opponent, both to race and to beat. He thanked the assembled company for being the hardest group in the world to beat, because he feels that you don't do your best unless you have to, and believe me, my competition in pro stock is the best. Dave also pointed out that his dream was to see a day in which professional IDBA motorcycle drag racers could decide to turn pro and successfully make a living at it, as do today's car racers. And believe me, that day is coming, he said. With his arm around Meredith, Dave credited her with making what they both do possible. Meredith is deeply involved in the management of Dave's Precision Automotive, their independent garage in Fort Myers, Florida, which is, by the way, is industry ranked in the top 3 in the state. She is, he says, as deeply involved in a racing effort. In fact, when Tony gives on the PA system about Meredith doing all the work, he isn't far wrong. At the race, she takes care of nearly all the details to let me work on winning. Dave was quick to admit that his recent success and the magnitude of his commitment to drag racing would not be possible without the help of all of his sponsors and a supportive group of fans. However, none deserve more credit in his mind than the Eagle One Group for taking a chance in the previously unproven sponsorship market. As an afterthought, Schultz added, "With a new decade beginning, I'm looking forward to and fully expect the 1990s to deliver outstanding performance and a significant mark in the motorsports fraternity by motorcycle drag racing and its stars. More corporate involvement will help us reach our share of the 75 million motorsport enthusiasts in the country. I look forward to the time when I can reflect on 1989 and think, boy, was I an amateur." The Schultz family is a racing family. Son Brian, now a junior at the University of South Florida Tampa, had a sports and race bike until his educational commitments got in the way, and daughter Kim is now a sophomore at the same institution, was just as supportive as is her mother. Dave's Precision Automotive now only gets about 10% of Dave's time, and he's had to drop completely the seminars he used to hold all over the USA for dealer service organizations, presently limiting himself to an occasional consulting job. iRacing and Public Relations program is just about full-time now. Since I'm my own rider, mechanic, rig driver, and PR guy, Schultz says, he does personal appearances for all of his sponsors in both auto and motorcycle shows, like to see him in APAA events. For instance, at the February dealer show in Cincinnati, his bike will be on display in one booth, but you'll probably see him making appearances and signing autographs for Vance & Hines, Kawasaki, Motul Premium Synthetic Oil, Tsukabi, and a new helmet sponsor. His commitment to and sponsorship from Eagle One will be even greater in 1990. Schultz will be featured on a new TV commercial for Eagle One Auto Care products and will be seen in the twice-weekly Eagle One Motorsports Gallery on ESPN. Next year, Schultz will include racing at every race that is available to him date-wise. That appears right now to be as many as 22, including IDBA, the NHRA Pro Stock Series, and the ATCO-based series. He may also be going back to Japan in May of this year for a race there, and possibly to Finland to ride his old bike, which now belongs to the Pro Stock champion of that country, Ville Malin. The Japanese race will also require a second bike, so Dave plans to begin the 90 season with the Kawasaki Hero last year while he was building a second machine. With his heavy schedule next year, Dave plans to hub as the airlines do. He'll leave Florida and headquarters in that big luxurious Eagle One rig in Indianapolis or Columbus, where Meredith will join him for the races. Then she'll fly back home to oversee the family business while Dave takes care of racing business. His eventual dream is to be able to headquarter in the family home near Dayton, Tennessee, tucked in East Tennessee Mountain. Right now, there's just not enough flights out of Dayton to get Meredith to work on time. Like many motorcycle drag racers, Schultz used to race cars. He quit that in 1974 because he says it seemed like a responsible thing for a family businessman to do. Then in 76, he tried backer racing a friend's motorcycle. He was hooked, and it seemed both harmless and inexpensive. Now he'll tell you that the toughest thing about racing is paying for it. As for the smartest and dumbest thing he's ever done, Dave says the smartest one is to decide at a young age that being normal or average was boring. The dumbest thing was to jump off a second-story balcony. He broke bones in both feet. The best advice he's ever received came from the Bible. The worst was from the guy who said, "Don't worry, Dave, you got this race in the bag." Schultz's advice to aspiring young racers is to become well-educated and well-rounded. It will make you more business conscious and more personable when you become a star. And don't listen to old racers, including possibly me. In all probability, his best advice is to treat the racing experience as he does. I don't gloat when it's good or cry when it's bad. I just consider it all part of my learning curve. A reporter asked him when he knew he made it. He said it was when a race official told him, "I would like to see somebody else win for a change." Dave plans to capture 3 Pro Stock #1 place next year, and he says that one of them will be his 5th IDBA championship in a row. Whoever comes out, you can be sure that Dave and Meredith will give it the best they've got, and they'll do it first class. In 1990, Schultz began his now legendary rivalry with John Myers, which was a massive draw for any race in which they competed, whether it was Pro Star, IDBA, or the NHRA. If people found out those two were at the same track, it became a must-attend race. The season started off sour for Schultz, but by the time September rolled around, it seemed Dave had found his footing in the best way possible by winning the 3 September Classics, the NHRA US Nationals in Indy, the IHRA US Nationals at ATCO Raceway, and the IDBA Fall Nationals at Norwalk Raceway Park. Schultz ended the season finishing runner-up in all 3 series to John Myers in Pro Star in the NHRA and friend Paul Gast in IDBA. In 1991, Schultz captured his first Triple Crown, winning the NHRA, IDBA, and AMA Pro Star Championship in the same year, while winning 5 NHRA national events. That same year at the NHRA Finals in Pomona, Paul Gast would find out the extent of Dave's dedication to trying to find any advantage over his competitors. If anyone saw the yellow and magenta Vance and Hines trailer roll in, he almost certainly saw Dave in the driver's seat. But it turned out there was way more to that story. When the Schultz made their first stop after leaving home, Meredith would take over driving duties while Dave was locked in the trailer working away on the bike. On the final stop before reaching the track, Dave would hop back in the driver's seat and ride into the track. They took these roles so seriously that Meredith had to learn to drive carefully because Dave would get upset if she changed lanes too quickly, causing his tools to slide off the bench.
Well, you just kind of learn as you go along. I mean, the first hauler we had was, of course, that little enclosed trailer. So you drive that, you learn how to drive that, you learn how to back it up. Then the next trailer comes along and it's bigger. So you just keep accelerating until you get to a tractor trailer. And I actually got my CDL before he did to haul the tractor, to have the to haul the bike in a truck and a trailer.
So you had already had it, and it was just kind of like, you already have it, so I'll just go in the trailer while you drive. That's just kind of how the conversation went to start that?
Yeah, I mean, you work to the last minute when you're at the shop. You load everything up, and then you drive all night to get to the racetrack. And there's some things that, you have to fine tune, so he would go back and do that, and I would drive and let him, finish up what he needed to. And then he would also go back in the back and take a short nap. So by the time we got to the track, he had a little bit of sleep and he was fresh when we got there.
In 92, Dave Schultz failed to score his 4th world title, finishing second to John Myers. Schultz's highlight that season included winning the US Nationals, starting a 3-year streak of winning the event, and winning the NHRA Finals, his first win in Pomona since 1988. Schultz looked to get redemption in 1993, but almost finished the season as quickly as it started. At the season opening race in Houston, Schultz was thrown from his bike, sliding about 800 feet down the racetrack, leaving him with a broken right wrist. Bruised and beaten, yet undeterred, Dave responded by winning 7 events that season en route to his 4th championship, including a 6-race win streak as well as a record-breaking run of 7.59 seconds at 181 miles an hour at the Keystone Nationals in Maple Grove. The first of any pro stock bike rider to go over 180 miles an hour. 1994 would be the year Dave Schultz's talent would be displayed in full force. That season, he dominated the pro stock bike world, winning 9 out of 11 national events and an NHRA schedule with a win-loss record of 40-2. Schultz was never outran on the track as his 2 losses were red light disqualifications. Schultz passed Terry Vance as the all-time winningest 2-wheel rider and scored his 2nd Triple Crown title in the span of 3 years. Dave went on to win his 6th and final NHRA Pro Stock Bike World title in 1996. That same year, he claimed his 7th consecutive win at the Southern Nationals at the Atlanta Dragway, which was at the time the longest winning streak at an event in NHRA history. In order to win that championship, though, Schultz had to face one of the last hurdles as at the Sears Craftsman Nationals in Topeka, Kansas. Dave broke an intake valve around 1, forcing him to watch on the sidelines as John Myers extended his 22-point lead. Dave called that moment the lowest he's felt as a racer. While Dave might have been physically and emotionally drained, his wife Meredith and crew chief Greg Cope wouldn't let him quit. Picking up the pieces and building an entirely new engine for Pomona, Schultz then broke that engine during the first session of qualifying at Pomona, so Meredith then packed the transmission into a suitcase, headed to LAX, flew out to Clearwater, Florida where she got a ride to the repair shop the moment they opened, had it fixed, and then flew back to Pomona the next day. Schultz qualified for the race and watched John Myers lose in round 1, securing Dave the championship.
On to round number 2. If Schultz could put away Cook, he would claim the title in the Winston Pro Stock Bike category. Down the quarter mile they would go at Pomona, and Dave Schultz would win the Pro Stock Bike title.
Congratulations to the champion, David Schultz.
Thank you. I wanted to hear you say that, Steve. I've been waiting for that.
You were being so careful not to red light, it almost cost you there. You had to gun him down.
Yeah, I know I did, but I felt like we'd made the changes on the bike, and Greg had really gotten a handle on where this bike needed to go all weekend, and so I felt like I could run him down. I just wanted to be really safe up there.
Well, I think they all fed off of each other. I mean, obviously Terry Vance was one of the biggest pioneers in pro stock motorcycle. And I was just thinking about that the other day. He accomplished in a short amount of time the notoriety and his wins and the respect that he had over what happened later on. If you think about some of the people that are in the pro stock motorcycles today, they've been around for 20, 22, 24 years. And Terry had a shorter, he had a business to run. So he accomplished what he did, and he retired and took what he had started, and then he created his business, to further his business along by doing that.
Dave's 1997 season was highlighted by winning the Gator Nationals. He made 6 final rounds the following 2 seasons, but didn't score a single victory until the 1999 Mile High Nationals. Saying in the victory interview, "I feel more confident now that I finally have a win under my belt. I tried not to stub my toe like I've done several other times in the finals. I've been doing well, but when it comes to the final I try to take too big a chunk and maybe too many changes. I'm not dead yet. I'm old, but I'm not dead. After Chicago, I began a new engine program with Byron Hines, and now that I feel I have some power, I also feel more confident, and it's actually made me a lot better. I found myself trying to make the bike do something that it's not ready to do yet." Schultz wouldn't win the rest of the season as Matt Hines would sweep the titles from 1997 to 1999. Around that time, Schultz's journey crossed paths with a young Aytron Brown, fresh out of college from New Jersey and looking to make his first pro stock bike start in '98 with cousin Troy Vincent as a team owner.
I first met Dave Schultz at a professional drag race with my team owner, that was going to be my team owner at the time, Troy Vincent. And what I remember was Dave was highly professional and just an incredible, personal mindset of being, paid very close attention to details in everything that he did. And, man, I tell you what, just a inventor and a scholar of the sport. and that he had a deep love and passion for what he did.
Aytron, who grew up watching Dave race, was taken under Schultz's wing and learned the ropes of how to ride a pro stock motorcycle. Brown even spent 6 months with the Schultzes building the top gas bike he would then test at Indianapolis Raceway Park, with Schultz teaching him how to look at the finer details that, when added up, gave him a better advantage against his competition. A lesson which 20 years later he still uses now as a top field driver and owner.
I'll tell you one thing that Dave helped me with a lot is when I went through all the training deal, before I even got to even ride the bike, I spent over 6 months with Dave building the pro stock motorcycle I was going to race. And I remember distinctly going out to IRP, testing the motorcycle, top gas bike. And Dave was just sitting there and just coaching me along the way what to do and how to do it, and riding position on how I need to do the clutch, how I need to let the clutch out, and just making me a better, skillful rider, and really making me understand the vehicle that I was racing on so I could understand how to ride it better. And I'll never forget that about Dave Schultz. And he always showed me all the small, detailed things is what makes a difference. And if you get enough of them, it'll end up turning into a big advantage that can actually make you and help you win races. And races helps you win championships. And that's what I took and learned from Dave, and which has really stayed with me over my 20-year career as a top fuel driver and going on and to be a team owner, is paying attention to all the small details and executing everything is key.
I had no doubts that Aytron could be and do anything that he wanted to do. He was an extremely marketable person, very pleasant, very optimistic and upbeat, and he had his family behind him every minute of the time, and it just all worked out. And he's just one of these people you just love. You can't help but not love Aytron Brown.
In August 2000, Dave Schultz announced he had been diagnosed with colon cancer. Sunoco set up a website for Dave's fans where they were able to keep up with his condition, as well as sending their well wishes and notes for Dave to read. With the next pro stock motorcycle event a month away, it gave Schultz time to get back on the bike in time for Brainerd. He would make it to the semifinals before losing to protege Aytron Brown, who would go on to win the event.
I remember in Brainerd 2000 when he came back that Dave came out like nothing has happened. Didn't want to talk about it, wasn't worried about it, and was really focused on racing. And I remember that he just never stopped. And we all knew that if somebody could beat cancer, it was going to be Dave Schultz. Even though they told him that he had stage 4 cancer, that if anybody can beat it, it was him, because he was going to be nonstop and relentless at what he did. And I remember him coming out there, and he came out there and raced. And when I raced him in the semifinals, he went up there and he threw down, he cut a good light, he rode the bike flawless, and we just nipped him at the end. And I remember the look on his face where he didn't even say nothing. He just said, hey. I said, hey, Dave, good race. He just nodded at me. And that means that he was ready to go back after it again. And right then I knew, I was like, oh, he's back.
In an interview with Boltz Wagner, Schultz revealed that after the Mile High Nationals a month prior, he went to visit a doctor after falling ill. What was then believed to be the flu ended up being the advanced late-stage cancer that was announced.
Well, I mean, everybody was hoping the initial diagnosis was wrong, but then it was confirmed by the oncologist at Indiana, at the medical school. Dave just had this incredibly positive attitude. He didn't complain. He certainly was uncomfortable, and the disease was eating him up. But his outward appearance was good. He was not he was a one day at a time, good outlook kind of person. And I think that's what held him through in the remarkable last 3 races. It was crazy that he got through those races, but he did it in good spirits. And he won in Houston. That was the last race of his life, and it wasn't long after that he passed. So it was a typical attitude of Dave. What's wrong? How do we fix it? The same way he would treat a motorcycle issue. What's wrong with it? What do we test? What do we measure? What do we fix? Exact same kind of engineering Dave Schultz approach to things. Morale, always good. Never saw him really down. And always looking ahead, very positively looking ahead. He had considered doing some racing schools in Las Vegas in January. So he had asked me to join him to help with the students. And he was thinking hard about that school. And of course, he didn't make it. Yeah. Okay. So he raced in Denver and he had the flu, which turned out to be fatal colon cancer. But those were, I went over his history very carefully, and there was nothing except he had the flu, and then that turned out to be cancer. So he raced, that was a Denver race, and he won that one. He got a Wally for that. Then he raced, let me try to get this straight because it's important. He had surgery and they took the tumor out. So let me say about the medical school, the oncology department, they used very aggressive drugs that were FDA approved, and it wouldn't touch the tumor. And then they were part of an international protocol. So they got a French drug that was really powerful. And I think I remember the name right, it was just 244. And you couldn't get that unless you were part of this international protocol. So maybe only 4 or 5 hospitals in the country could have had that. And they tried that on him, and the tumors kept going. So I was really pretty critical about medicine, but I was very proud of how the oncologists did. I don't think they left any stones unturned. Usually if I find those, I'm obnoxious, but I was really impressed with how they did. So I was with him every time he went in to talk to the doctor. So, I have on a white lab coat and a tie and a shirt, but I made a deal with the oncologist that I would just go in and sit. I was just accompanying Dave. And there was one time that the oncologist asked me if I'd seen the scans. And I said, no, I don't want to know anything about what's going on besides what he knows. I think I can support him better as a friend if I haven't seen scans or any other material. So every time he went in, I was with him, and I just sat quietly. I never said a word. But that kept me exactly up to date wherever Dave was. So that gave us the opportunity to talk very freely. And as I say, the orientation is, here's a problem, how do we fix it? Optimistic, how do we fix it? He was, I wasn't with him 24/7. So he must have had some bad times in the middle of the night. I never saw it. He was always, Dave, what's the problem? Let's fix it. What can we do next? Is there another drug? It was great. Just Dave. Always Dave. Optimistic. Gonna beat it. So, he was a multi-time champion. He'd raced under enormous pressure for years and years. I think all those guys have attitudes like that. They don't get discouraged. They don't quit. They just work really hard. And they're optimistic that whatever's wrong, they're going to fix. So he'd had surgery. They got the tumor out. And he said, there's a race in Minnesota. And it may be my last race, so I'd really like to go. Well, his blood numbers were crap, he didn't have many red blood cells. And the conclusion was, if the car is low on oil, we can fill it up. And it'll be okay till it runs out of oil again. So they transfused him, and he drove all the way to Minnesota, and he was in the semis, almost won the thing. And I was out of town, so I was watching on the web what his trials were, and they were horrible. And I thought, God, the tumors are so bad now, he can't crouch on the bike. It was just awful. And he almost won it. He came in second. He had to be in a lot of pain. And there he was, turning 190 miles an hour. Then he went to Houston, and he was a mess by then. He was really, he was at the end. And somehow he won the race. It's just beyond understanding. Dave was so special. You can't evaluate it medically, as an engineer, any way you look at it. It didn't make any sense, except he was Dave. And not long after that, he was gone. So at death's door, he went to Houston and won outright. You want to have a definition of hero? You could write that one down.
On August 25th, Schultz underwent surgery and began chemotherapy treatment. During that time, John Smith was set to replace Schultz for 7 races, including the U.S. Nationals. In an article posted by the NHRA that same day, Dave would talk about his battle with cancer, talking in depth about his initial reaction in the first meeting with doctors. "I don't know how to wear yet," Schultz said after his initial diagnosis. "The doctor told me that if I needed to race, it would have very little impact on our plan of attack, so I elected to be where I was most comfortable immediately after learning of it, at a racetrack. I wanted to be in a big crowd." In the days before the Colonel's Truck Accessories NHRA Nationals of Brainerd, Minnesota, Schultz underwent extensive tests followed by a CAT scan to determine his physical condition after a downhill slide with what he thought simply was a flu. On Thursday before Brainerd at 5:30 p.m. as they're giving my 6 pint of blood, I decided to go to the race. For those people to understand all of this, my hemoglobin was down to 5, my red blood cell count was down to below 5. They told me, "We start putting people in the emergency room with counts higher than this, and you've been working." We didn't know it was bad. We just thought my blood was leaking, that I had some ulcers. They gave me 6 units of packed red blood that day. When the doctor told me that I have cancer, I was shocked, Schultz said. He has a tumor on his colon with spots on his liver. He talked about his conversation as it happened with the doctor. I told him, "You told me what the deal is." He said, "We've been working towards trying to get you ready for the race this weekend." I asked if that would seriously jeopardize my fighting the cancer. He said, "No, I think it's been there a long time. I don't think that will make much difference." The big question is, how could someone like Schultz let something like this go undetected for so long? During his oncologist meeting on Tuesday, he received the lecture from the doctor. Right up front, I need to tell you to stop beating yourself up for not catching this sooner. Telling his reaction to the doctor, Schultz said, "I was doing that," saying, "I can't believe I didn't catch this." The doctor continued, "Anytime any athlete of any caliber comes in here, the cancer is never in the early stages. What makes you successful as an athlete, your method to mask pain, would make a mere mortal like me go immediately to get the problem fixed. The performers tend to work through all this stuff and believe that it's a part of normal life. If we'd found it sooner, it would probably have been totally by accident, not anything you would have told us about. That's why Lance Armstrong and people like that are always in advanced stages." Schultz replays the summer when he began showing signs I didn't recognize them in his mind. What I really believe started this happened 2 months ago. I was cutting my grass and hit something while mowing that jolted the mower into my side. Ribs came down and pinched what I thought was my kidney. I had a really sharp pain in my right side. About 3 days later, I had to go to a race, so I drank a lot of water, doing everything you do to nurture an irritated kidney. When I think about it, I had been for a month or so feeling out of gas. I had so much to do and so much going on, and I was trying to do it all myself. Though I didn't feel good, I thought I would focus more on my health when I was done with those projects. A couple weeks later, I had an upper respiratory infection that so many people had. In Denver, I bottomed out. Jim Peterson couldn't go, so I drove straight through. I couldn't sleep well anyways. In 3 days, Thursday through Saturday, I had only slept 1 hour and 20 minutes. When I finally fell asleep at 1 a.m. Sunday, they let me sleep until 9:30 a.m. I went to the doctor there and he put me on some antibiotics because it was going around there too. When I got back from Denver, I was wiped out. For a week, if I tried to do very much, I would get lightheaded and think I was going to faint. There were side effects of the antibiotics that masked the loss of blood, so I wasn't worried about some of my bodily changes. I thought I either had or was shaking pneumonia. It kept waiting to stabilize after the antibiotics, but it didn't happen. When I had dinner with a friend from medical college, he looked at me and said, "You're going to the doctor." They checked me out the first day, x-ray and everything, and found nothing. After the third blood test, they sent me to a specialist. They checked me for ulcers, nothing. Then they went the other way and did a colonoscopy. First, they told me I had a lesion on my colon the size of a quarter. From its appearance, they thought it was just malignant on the biopsy. They told me at about 2:30 Thursday, "We'll get you laced up with blood and feeling better before we operate," they said. About 5:30, the surgeon came in. Results from the CAT scan said we needed to talk. The tumor the size of a grapefruit is in the same vicinity as my liver, and my liver has 2 spots on it. Looking back today, I believe it's not bleeding or doing anything wrong until I aggravate a lawnmower, and that's what started the bleeding. We're going to do the operation Friday morning at 10 to remove the tumor. Approximately 3.5 weeks after that, we'll start me on chemotherapy. The cancer is a little more widespread than they originally thought. The oncologist said that there is quite a bit of cancer. He told me, "The way you look is a good indicator. I guarantee you that if we put you in a lineup, no one on the IU staff will point to you and say there's a cancer patient." Most of my vital signs are performing wonderfully. The real key, he told me, is that if we conquer the liver cancer, then everything will follow suit. It's an excellent barometer to how I'm responding to the therapy. If it responds, treatment is working in other places. Miraculously, Dave would have one last hurrah in his career, as he would enter the Mac O'Toole Super Nationals at Houston Raceway Park, the same track that almost derailed his '93 championship run. In an article released by the NHRA the week of the race, they would have a follow-up with Dave to talk about his condition and where he was once again went into detail about his outlook on life at that current moment. "We're still optimistic about everything," he said. "I remain adequately functional through the whole thing. The nausea is the worst. I've been through 3 different nausea medicines. One was giving me tremendous anxiety, so I keep a log of everything. I tell them, I think this is causing this. They say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's try this. We fine-tune my support medicines for symptoms. My analytical nature has helped me to help them break things down and fine-tune my symptom support medicine. So for next cycles, I know I can cure a symptom by doing something already known. I'm taking more Dave time. I'll decide that today I'm going to go see this person and see what he's working on, or I'm going to drive around and look at the leaves. I'm not catering to someone's perceived frantic need. Stress is not my friend and I won't participate. If you try to lay too much on me, it won't work. Where I've always been the one to make it happen, meet the deadline, I'm not always going to do that now. I've spent a lot of years ignoring Dave and the people around me. I'll go work out, or if I decide I want to go shoot basketball, I do, for no particular reason, with no one else with me. I enjoy just going out into the little area behind my house and watching a squirrel work his butt off hiding nuts for the winter. I'm reading more books of various kinds. Some days are okay, some days I have fatigue, some days I have depression, and some days I have neither. I have sort of developed a pattern. I know what kind of day I'm going to have. It's fair to say that having cancer, even without the prognosis that you have a disease that can kill you, is still an emotional and physical roller coaster that's sometimes surprising. You may be in the checkout line thinking, I don't need to be here, I need to be somewhere else. It'll make you do things you never knew you were going to do. Still, I'm generally doing well. I'm talking to sponsors doing normal things I would be doing. I have a development plan on the bikes. I'm building bikes for other people. I might table my bikes and put theirs in front of mine. I'll keep the work out there and not fall out of the loop. With the school right now, we're delaying everything until the first of the year because I'm not sure I'll be able to build the school bikes. While Meredith has been busy with Brian keeping Schultz race products running, between going to and from Indianapolis and his Fort Myers, Florida home, Schultz's primary care has been his mother. She moved in 2 months ago to be my mom again. She's done a very good job. She had to go for a couple days to Tennessee for a family death. It was then that I realized that there's no one to clean up the dishes or make my bed. She's been wonderful. She's been a stability that I needed without being too hovering. She's been good at giving an adult son a space, but also treating me like I need. When asked about the weekend, he would say, "It's a big deal," said Schultz. "In the first round of qualifying, no matter what, I'll be on the bike. John is coming to the race with me. He's flying to Houston. He said, if you're riding, I'll be a part of the crew. I'll ride if I can. If I don't feel like I can do as good a job as he can, I'll get off the bike and then have another day to qualify the bike. It's just a goal. I've never been able to ride this bike with a new engine combination, so I'm anxious to do that. We know we're very fast. We have the quickest bike in the back half of the track at Maple Grove. We just have to get the short times better. I like working with John. I think he likes what goes inside my trailer and inside my head. He's seen the value of our thought process." Logistically, Schultz's 2 weeks out of chemotherapy are being maximized. Meredith will go to Houston. My son Brian wants to come just to be there. We should have a good crew. Marty Ladwick will bounce in and out because it's his home track. Jim Peterson will be driving the rig. We're doing a juggle because we have 20 hours from Houston to be in Las Vegas, where we'll have 2 show bikes and a SEMA show. I'll have 2 show booths to work in Las Vegas. I'm expecting to be out of some of the drools of chemotherapy on the upswing at that time. We've taken the motorhome with the show trailer, so John and Jim will jump on the motorhome and show trailer after Houston and head to Vegas. Meredith will take the rig to California and I'll fly to Vegas. Normally, Jim and I do the big drive. Both way stations, we feel like we'll do better time getting the bikes there with the motor home. When we leave at 4 p.m., we get into Vegas about 23 hours later driving hard in the semi. We make it just in time for last check-in. Dave Schultz would go on to win his 45th and final NHRA national event win, shocking everyone in the process and getting to celebrate an emotional victory for what would be the final time. Due to his deteriorating health, John Smith would take over the riding duties for Pomona.
Down with his wife, Meredith, how proud are you about this accomplishment?
This is missed me so much of this team this weekend, you just don't even know. It's such a morale booster for Dave for the upcoming months that he's got, and I can't tell you how happy we are right now.
And how about the fan support all weekend? Tremendous.
It's been tremendous. We've had supporters come up to us all weekend long and just tell us, they're right behind us.
It's time to go celebrate another national event win. Congratulations.
To go. Bill Stevens, I see the smile on David.
What a great moment down here, Mac. Dave Schultz getting his national event trophy from Jackie Beck, Miss Winston, our friends from Matco Tools. And Dave, you came to this track not even knowing if you could race this weekend. Could you ever expect it would end this way?
No, I really didn't. I came to this track and I had John Smith on call. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to race right now. When I left Brainerd, I wasn't positive that I'd ever race again. But chemotherapy's going well. Things are coming right along, and this is the best therapy I could ever have.
I remember in Houston, he went out and he won his last race won his last race. And it was very heartfelt, and it was unbelievable because he came out there and he torched the competition of what a six-time world champion should do. And the one thing I could tell you that I took from all that was, no matter what's going on in life, never quit, never stop, and always stay consistent at putting your best foot forward, no matter what.
Well, I think the thing that was fresher in my mind, because, keep in mind that he passed away in 2001. So probably, I think what sticks out in my mind is the last race he won in Houston in the year 2000. He had been diagnosed with cancer. He had been undergoing chemotherapy, and he was on a 2-week break from chemotherapy. And he was determined he was going to get back on the bike and ride, which he did. And he was weak, obviously, but there's some instinct that makes you do what you do. And he pulled it off, and he won the race. He was very weak, but he'd been racing for so long. I think there's a lot of instinct that comes in there, and it helped him through that. But the racing part of it, that's just something he loves to do, and the adrenaline is what carried him through to the end of the race. But it was a struggle, but he was determined to do it, and he pulled it off. Well, knowing what his prognosis was, it was very monumental, because in my mind, it might have been, and it was, the last race that he would be able to compete in. He had thoughts about trying to compete in Pomona for the last race of the year, but that just didn't happen. He was too weak, and at that point he was starting to get a little bit disoriented. So it was a decision that he knew that he couldn't compete anymore.
Even with colon cancer taking a toll on Schultz's body, it didn't stop him from preparing for the 2001 season and trying to find another edge against the competition during the offseason. A picture taken in November of that offseason shows Schultz in a wind tunnel at Purdue University, looking for that hundredth of a second difference in a run. During this time, Dave was also looking at hosting a motorcycle drag racing school in Las Vegas.
He was, once it starts, he was one of these people that just had to see it through, and he wanted to be better than anybody at it. He wanted to be more creative, at it than anybody else, and he knew that everybody they were hot on his heels, so he had to stay sharp and do that. So he had a lot of incentive from the people that were in the class, because any one of them, if he took a day off or anything, they'll slip in underneath him, and it happened several times, and he always managed to pull it back out. But that's what happens that's what makes you a good racer, is your competitors.
I had been in the wind tunnel many times with some smaller bikes that we race at Bonneville. So it turns out the professor and I, the guy who ran the place, he was wonderful. And so I just cold called him and said, got some Bonneville bikes and want to put them in the tunnel. And he said, that's cool, let's do it. So every year I had a 6-week student project that didn't cost anything, and we'd have a bike in there. And then Dave had come out with his last bike, the very sophisticated one, and he was in the tunnel, and we were using smoke screens to look for places. The wind is laminar, so it flows in straight lines, and if it hits a smooth part of the bike, it will stick to it and smoothly go over it. And then if it hits a spot that it's not happy with, it'll get turbulent and swirl around. And so that's a place to think about. And then the trouble is you fix that and you make it worse later on. I was shocked, but understood that the Ferrari wind tunnel runs all day, 365 days a year. And the problem is that getting air to work well, especially around a complicated machine like a motorcycle, which has handlebars and open spaces, you can get the top to behave pretty well, but the sides are a mess, underneath is a mess. So they're hard, and if you can just figure out a little bit, you can make big progress. The seats were wrong. I was never happy with the seats. And the Honda road race bike that we did at Bonneville had a seat that was chopped off, and I got rid of that and I sat on it, had less drag. So then we designed a seat that with duct tape and cardboard that we taped on me, and it didn't have much drag. So we made a fiberglass seat in that shape and set a lot of records at Bonneville. So I was familiar with the wind tunnel. I'd been in it many, many times by then. And then Dave was in it, and, he was crampy by then. He got some kind of a leg cramp or something, and he stayed frozen for a long time. And he said, I was hurting, but I just didn't want to change the position. So you measure the drag in pounds, and, the amount of pounds that he would vary would be half a pound at 100 miles an hour. So he would have some base number of pounds, which I can't remember. But then once he hit that, he could hold it within a half a pound, which is some major riding, meaning you're frozen on the bike, you're not wiggling around, you're not doing silly things. So he was, by wind tunnel standard, an absolutely superb world-class rider, no question. He knew how to crouch on that bike at speed. I was pretty sure the seat was wrong, but we never got around to tinkering with that.
3 months later, on February 11th, 2001, Dave Schultz's battle with cancer ended as Schultz died at 51 years old. Dave Schultz had a memorial service in Indianapolis before being sent back home to Fort Myers, Florida for another memorial service before being buried. Schultz would have one last memorial service hosted at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Pavilion. During the 2001 season, Meredith Schultz would arrange the Dave Schultz Memorial Tour. The tour was a way to remember the life and career of one of drag racing's all-time greats, a way to commemorate a 9-year relationship between Dave Schultz and the Sunoco brand, as well as a way for Dave's close friends to say their goodbyes to one of the sport's icons. The Memorial Tour consists of a solo pass being made on Dave's Hayabusa bike between the semifinal and final events at various national events. The special memorial scheme would be unveiled at the Atlanta Dragway, where Dave debuted the new Hayabusa body a year prior. John Smith would replace Dave during his cancer treatment and ride the bike at the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, while Aytron Brown would be scheduled to ride the bike at Houston Raceway Park, where Dave won his final race the year prior, as well as other riders such as Paul Gaston and Reggie Showers.
We had a friend that was had been helping us in marketing over the years. And when Dave passed away, he actually called me up and he suggested maybe that Sunoco might be interested in doing the memorial tour and having a guest writer at each of the events. And so that's where that all came about. And NHRA was very receptive to it. And then we got with our fabricator, Kenny Williams. They came up, and our graphics guy, Doug Schultz, they came up with a theme, and we got the bike together, and it was basically the same race bike, but it had different graphics on it and different bodywork. But we got it together, and it was a team effort, and I really appreciate all the help that went into that.
Well, the memorial tour for Dave, his wife, Meredith Schultz, was putting the tour on, and it was an honor to be able to race his bike down the racetrack that he won last. And he was always a huge mentor and a hero to me in all my aspects of racing. He taught me how to be a true professional. He taught me always how to strive for greatness. And he taught me to never and always to stay humble and to always push forward. And that memorial tour was special. Every time I saw his bike go down the racetrack, his bike was the only new Hayabusa on the race tour at the time, because he always pushed the envelope of designing and making things and making them right.
Dave's legacy would continue on, however, as his son Brian Schultz, who would carry his dad's torch. The younger Schultz started his career by crew chiefing for Reggie Showers, helping Showers score his first top 10 points finish in 2001. They would continue working together in 2002, but by that time, Brian picked up a knack for racing when run Del Forest's Hayabusa Formula Superbike at Pro Star events, making it to the finals in his first appearance. Brian ended up picking up his first wins at the final two races of the season, including the World Finals, as well as making a final in Top Gas aboard Dan Newsy's Kawasaki. In 2003, Schultz would debut at the Gator Nationals on a Suzuki and made an appearance at the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis riding Eddie Krawick's Hayabusa. Tragically, in 2004, Brian lost his life on I-75 after a semi tried to make a late turn for an exit, not noticing Brian alongside him after testing a Top Gas bike in Bradenton, Florida. Many of the drag racing world would turn out for his funeral as everyone was devastated due to the unexpected tragedy as well as how young he was taken. Brian was only 34 years old.
Well, that's a very touching thing, talking about Brian. One of the nicest people that I ever knew. He was just wonderful. Just as nice as could be in all regards, very talented in what he did. And you're right, he was a good rider, great tuner, all these things. I'm sure he got a lot from his dad. And we built him his very first bike. I don't know if he was 10 years old. Maybe he was 11. We built him a bike with one of our carburetors on it, and he went out and showed off with the thing, and his dad was so proud. Reeked of pride. Brian looked up to Dave, at the highest level possible, emulated him in lots of ways. Just a clean-cut, nice kid. I don't even know if I ever heard a foul word come out of his mouth. And then to lose him like that was just, oh boy, that's a tough one right there. And but I was proud to know him for so long, especially when he was young and weak. Dave said to me, I want to build a bike for Brian. I said, what kind? He said, 175, whatever. I got one laying around here. And we did. We had the same fellow Puppet that built his 750 Blue H2, build the thing, got it done in record time, went out, and the thing set records instantly. And Brian was very, very on the thing, and quite cute, actually, because he was very young, very young. One day I'll send you a picture of him on it. It's pretty cool. Now, Brian, one of those, I don't think there's a person anywhere that didn't like him to the highest level. He was just the most likable guy you ever saw. So that's what I know.
Brian was a very athletic person, all as a little kid, all the way up. and everything came easily to him, just because he's just one of those people that it all clicks. And that was his intention. He wanted to race. He could ride. He needed the seat time, and he needed to learn how to race, because there's a lot of riders out there that can ride well, but there's a few that are good racers, just outright good racers.
At the end of his career, he had amassed 23 AMA Pro Star National Event wins, including 2 championships, 7 International Drag Bike Association championships, 45 NHRA National Event wins, 5 U.S. national victories, 3 Triple Crowns, and 6 NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycle World Championships. Schultz was in a tie for the most championships in the class alongside Andrew Hines and now 2022 champion Matt Smith, scoring 14 consecutive top 10 NHRA points finishes. Schultz ranked 44th of the NHRA's top 50 drivers in 2017, as well as being inducted into the 2001 class of the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame.
It was extremely surprising, but I was extremely honored. I just never imagined that would ever happen. And when they contacted me about it, I was extremely humbled and appreciative of the fact that they revered him so much to give him that title. And that does mean a whole lot.
When I read things about Dave Schultz, the AMA Hall of Fame it's never mentioned. And that's crazy. To get in the AMA Hall of Fame is extremely difficult. There are only a few people, 3-4 people get in a year. AMA has 200,000 members, and out of that, there are flat trackers, Bonneville people, ice racers, trials riders, drag strip. Everybody's in that pool, and it's really an incredible honor to get in the Hall of Fame. And it astonishes me that that's one of the biggest honors that Dave ever got, in my opinion, and it's never mentioned. Which is weird. Well, he had already passed when I got in, and I was really delighted. It was the biggest honor of my life for sure. And so to be in there with him and the other motorcycle people I knew, people that held land speed records or stunt riders. We had a trials rider who was a national champion, a girl, and then she went on to be a very famous stunt rider in Hollywood. So she was in. How do you rank those people against each other? In the Matrix movie, there was a motorcycle scene where they were on top of an 18-wheeler on the highway, jumping off of the truck. That was her.
Wow.
Riding. She was at that level. That's, there's no way in hell any of the rest of us would jump off a 18-wheeler. That would be crazy. So just wonderful riders, or if they were organizers, they had to be somebody who contributed a large measure in that. There are people that have organized national things, they've organized or they've held very important events annually or contributed in some other very, very important way to motorcycling. So it's a lot of the names, I don't know. A lot of them go way back. It's an old Hall of Fame, but it's a beautiful museum. It's a gorgeous building. It's in Columbus, Ohio. It has its own building, and the bikes are all beautiful. It's an incredible place to visit.
The contribution Dave Schultz has made to the drag racing world, however, goes well beyond the accomplishments and awards he had amassed over the span of his 3 decades-long career. Through the work he did on track with his legendary battles against like a Terry Vance and late John Myers to help promote the platform of motorcycle racing, to the lives he touched and the knowledge he shared for the next generation of racers, his legacy is unable to be described by me alone. So to end this video, I've opted to let the people closer to Dave throughout his 51 years on this earth explain to you just how much his contributions mean to world drag racing and the immeasurable legacy he left behind.
I can tell you what it was like at the races. You know, his 18-wheeler would be open and ribboned off, but the people who walked by could look inside and see what he was doing and see what he was working on. So he was quite open about that. And he was busy. He didn't take time then to give signatures out because he was, you know, everybody's going nuts between laps. So he was very busy, but he was very friendly. And when it wasn't race face time, he was extremely congenial and happy to do autographs. And, you know, if people still remember him, they should, because he was a hero. And but what I've learned is that once you go, people are pretty quick to forget. And I think everybody that worries about their place in history, and I know some people in science who are literally will say that out loud. And I think they're crazy. After they're gone and not in the spotlight anymore, they will soon be forgotten. And I've come to accept, having seen that enough ways, that happens. And I'm very happy that you're doing a history program on Dave. He deserves it. I mean, he was only very recently that his record has been broken, right? Took Angel years, decades to catch him for the total number of wins, which I think was 45. And she's a really good rider and had good bikes, and it took her a long time. So he certainly accrued those numbers in a much shorter time than it took Angel to catch up. But it took somebody of her caliber with her kind of sponsors to have a chance to catch him. So I'm really glad you're doing this. I think people miss it if they don't remember these guys and don't remember what they were like, because they're role models. You know, if you're at death's door in pain with tumors everywhere that we can't knock out with the most radical stuff out of another country, and he gets on the bike and goes and wins Houston, if that doesn't impress you, I don't know what to tell you. You know, I have some heroes in my life. He's one of them, that's for sure. He's at the top of the list. Glad he's in the Hall of Fame, and shame on the press for not mentioning that. They jabber on about Wally's, but the American Motorcyclist Hall of Fame is really special, and Meredith accepted that honor for him because he had just passed away. So he was not alive when he was inducted. Just missed it by, you know, a little bit, few months. I know he would have loved it. He deserved to be remembered as a superb hero, a gentleman, and a very kind man who was also a brat and full of fun.
Innovation, the word that comes out quick. Seriousness, just beyond good at what he did. No one's ever going to forget what Dave Schultz did in racing. He was a great family man, beautiful family. And I think his legacy is never going to fade. I just think that what he's done in the sport is off the charts. I am absolutely blessed to have been associated with Dave for the years that I was, as well as to race against him. I raced with him and then raced against him. And I can't tell you how hard that was. But the sport is better because of him. Again, the word innovation is probably one of the biggest things. And he's the very essence of hard work. Never seen anything like it. I tried to be there with him, but guys sometimes could just outwork me. He was something else and all that. And I think his legacy will go on forever. I'll never forget the guy as long as I'm around.
And I guess to end it, do you maybe have one more story in the bank that you might have never told anybody that you might like to share?
Well, I snuck his bike, his blue two-stroke, out to our local 8th mile track one day, and I was experimenting with stuff, and his bike was here, getting some other work done, and I snuck it out to the track, and I think we had, I know we didn't have cell phones, and cameras were pretty crude back then, but I may have gotten a little video, or certainly at least a picture to him, and all he did is shake his head and grin. He says, something else needing here, because he knew I was trying to make it go faster. But I don't even think I asked him. I think I just snuck it out there, and we had a lot of fun. I got a picture of that.
The impact on pro stock motorcycle that Dave Schultz has is not even measurable. He's impacted so many people's lives, from racers like Reggie Showers, myself, Stephanie Reeves, Michael Phillips, Ricky Gatson. The list goes on and on and on. And if you raced against him, he pushed you to your limits where you didn't win a lot, trust me. And that definitely has stuck with me to this day. And just his keenness and just his mindset, that he just loved the sport so much that he just never quit in everything that he did. He just truly just, I just remember staying with him in his apartment. One quick story where we stayed up until 2 a.m. in the morning, and he kept on just sketching different parts and pieces he wanted to innovate and have created and put on a motorcycle. And this is before CAD and all the 3D drawings you could do on a computer, because back then we had floppy disks back then. We actually just had the 3.5 inch hard disk, and we didn't have the floppies no more. We just went to them. And I remember distinctly Dave had grid paper, and he was drawing out different stuff that he wanted to do new with a triple clamp and an engine plate, and how he wanted to lighten it and take weight off, how he wanted to make them out of mag and not T6 aluminum. And I never forget, and then he had them key false coated where people thought they were anodized aluminum, and they weren't. They were magnesium. So the man definitely had a deal before his time, and he innovated a vacuum pump on our Pro Stock motorcycle engine that nobody has, and he had it hidden inside where he stored his battery box so nobody can see it. I mean, he was just one of those type of people that I just respect and admire for what he put in to the sport, and a lot of people have looked up to him as their hero. And he was the fastest milkman alive when he had his first Sunoco sponsorship. His leathers were all white, and it had Dave Schultz written on top of his helmet, and they used to call him the milkman. And when I grew up as a kid, I used to tease and laugh, and people laughed at me. I said, well, you're going to be like, I want to be like Dave Schultz, but I told him I was going to be the chocolate milkman. What a hero. And one thing I think the fans will always remember about Dave Schultz and his legacy is that he bled the word champion by the way he lived his life. He never stopped. He never quit. No matter how hard the chips were, he always fought. And he's still fighting right now. Burn some Mickey Thompson rubber up there in heaven.
He would have wanted the legacy to be, he wanted Pro Stock Motorcycle to live forever in NHRA as a pro category. And it started out from we were the kind of the fillers. If they had time in the program when we started out in Pro Stock Motorcycle, they would run us. Maybe if they were out of time, they wouldn't. So they got to that, to where, we were a mainstream. They gave us quite a few races in the schedule, and there's still more work to be done. And we have some people in the sport that are devoted. They're very devoted, and they'll try to keep the sport going. Try to keep the personality in it. A lot of it's, I hate to say it, but it is a form of show business. You got to keep the sport interesting, and so that's going to be the biggest main issue that everybody needs to remember.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, this has been Mighty Mac, and I will see you next time.